Buraya.
Yere oturalım.
Buraya otur.
Can I put it on speaker?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marko Cimbaljevich, and we're going to start. It is 3 p.m. As I said, my name is Marko, and I am the American Citizen Services Chief here at Consulate General Istanbul. And on the line, I have my counterpart in Ankara. Are you there?
I am. My name is Aroosha Rana, and I'm the American Citizen Services Chief in Ankara.
So thank everyone for joining us. We're going to ask if you can keep your phones or computers on mute. We have over 230 individuals on this, and we're all trying something new. So please bear with us. It was very important that we find a way to communicate with our American citizens as quickly as possible. And so we're all getting used to this platform. So as we start, I just wanted to share some key messages for the American citizen community here in Turkey. As you know, this is an unprecedented time. Nothing like this nothing like this current global pandemic has occurred in any of our lifetimes. And every day, even sometimes frustratingly so, there seems to be new guidance and new restrictions. So it can be hard to observe all that information that's coming your way and to make the best decisions for oneself and one's family. As many of you have seen, the U.S. mission in Turkey is sending a health alert to U.S. citizens to give updated information. And of course, for general information, please continue to check out the Mission Turkey COVID-19 page found on our website. It's the same website where we posted this link earlier. And of course, we urge everyone to enroll in STEP to receive this updated guidance and information as soon as we send them out. You can register at STEP at step.state.gov. I'm assuming many of you listening have already registered, as this virtual town hall was advertised through our STEP messaging system. But please share this information with other U.S. citizens you know in Turkey.
All right. Thank you, Marko. To add, the main focus of today's webinar here is to give you key information and guidance about the current events that are happening right now. As we all know, the situation is changing from moment to moment, day to day, week to week. That's why we're trying to be available to you and give as much information as we can on our website. But today in particular, we want to talk to you about the decisions you might be making with yourself as an individual and with your family in terms of whether you are staying here in Turkey to weather the pandemic or if you want to go home now. We all know that there is a diverse group of US citizens that are living here in Turkey. Marko and I, we are here with our families. We've been here for years. I've been here this is my 4th year. Marko is on his 3rd. We made the decision to stay here and remain here with our families, with our children, with our spouses, and remain here until the pandemic has subsided and we can move again. It's difficult to make these decisions when you're here long term. A lot of you, I recognize some familiar names, our residents here in Turkey. There's others of you who are joining who may be here on a short-term basis for a project or tourism. A lot of you have already been in touch with us over phone and email to let us know what your thinking is. We're really here today to tell you about certain things that we want you to do and actions that we want you to consider now. Our main message to you, if you are a US citizen in Turkey who is considering departing, you need to depart now. We've already seen commercial flight options shrink, and we expect to see them shrink further. We sent out a message to all of you earlier, but the State Department is not looking to do any what we call repatriation flights, something that the US government organizes. That's why we really need you to focus on looking to see what's commercially available. Right now, currently to date, today, there is one commercial option available outside of Istanbul. It's a flight on Belavia Airs to go through Minsk. From Minsk, you can connect through Amsterdam, Paris, London, or Frankfurt to an onward flight to the United States. The option is very limited. In order to make that flight reservation, you need to do it through a travel agent. We've been told that that is so that your bags can make the onward flight connections. You have to remain in transit at the airport. There is no hotel option available, but that right now is your best option, your only option, in fact, to head out.
That's right. And as Aroosha said, we don't know exactly how long this option is going to be available. So if you want to leave, please do so while you can. The US government does not anticipate arranging repatriation flights in Turkey at this time. A couple of citizens have already told us they prefer to pass on the commercial options and wait for a US government arranged flight. However, that is not a good idea. There are currently no plans of any sort arranged that we have a repatriation flight. So if you want to go out now, if you need to go out now, your only option is a commercial flight. A lot of flight options are being suspended, so if you want to leave, please take this option now. We do not know how long it will be available, right? Because Turkish Airways does not plan to reopen until May 1st, but this could be subject to change, just as they originally set the date to April 17th and have extended that already once. We don't have any information on when flights will definitely start up again, so we are sort of informing you now of this one commercial option that is available.
And to add on to that, we have had a handful of US citizens take that option. We've had US citizens leave on the flight that we were advertising that was going through Qatar Airways to Doha. We had people leave on the last flights out. We have US citizens that are taking the Minsk flight and successfully making it back home. It does involve connections. It does involve the transit in the airport, but it is an option that has worked for some families that were here that wanted to go home for other reasons.
And as everyone knows, something else to raise is on April 3rd, I think this past Friday, the president of Turkey announced new restrictions intended to combat the spread of the virus in the country. These restrictions are constantly changing and include one, a 15-day ban on vehicles entering, departing 31 provinces, including Istanbul and Ankara. Another one is curfew restricting individuals under the age of 20 from leaving their homes, as previously implemented for individuals 65 years or older. And three, requirement for all individuals who wear face masks or coverings where people are collectively located, including supermarkets, marketplaces, and workplaces. And this includes those who come to the consulate for ACS services.
These measures are all being promulgated very quickly by the Turkish government as they're trying to control the spread of the virus. We did contact over the weekend, we contacted the Turkish government to clarify how these restrictions would impact a US citizen who needs to travel to an airport in a different province, in a different city, to leave the country. We were assured that the Minister of Interior has given all governors the instruction to let foreigners pass to exit so that they can catch their international flight to exit the country. The thing is there is no centralized process for which this travel permission can be obtained. So when you're trying to leave, we've been asking folks to get in touch with us to let us know what their information is, the particular flight details, the city that they're leaving for, so that we can double track your information with the central government here in Ankara through our Ministry of Foreign Affairs contacts. That is not a guarantee that you will receive the permission to leave, but it's the option that we have at hand to try to assist you. So what we're doing is we're sharing the information forward that we receive. You can get in touch with us by email and we'll be able to send you that information, the link to sign on to it. It's also been in our previous health alerts. We've linked to the form, which we ask for your name, date of birth, passport information, and details of your flight. There's many of you who were booked on future flights that seem to be canceled right now. For example, the Qatar Airways flight. I want you to know that we've still kept your names and we have passed that forward to the Turkish government, and we're trying to work out ways that they may be able to extend the permissions for when you actually have a flight in hand. In terms of our email addresses, you've been on our websites, there's a contact us page, but to tell you, in Istanbul, we can be reached at acs_Istanbul@state.gov. And for Ankara, it's ankara-acs@state.gov. I don't expect you to remember these email addresses, but please do look on our website. We check the inboxes. We have duty officers available to field your calls. So please do get in touch with us. There's another piece of information that the Turkish government updated in terms of restrictions, and that is for the 20-year-old and younger crowd. As you know from the news, 65-year-old aged individuals and individuals under the age of 20 are asked to remain at home. The government has confirmed to us that this does not apply to people who are foreigners who are trying to exit the country. So if you are under 20 or over 65 and you are stopped at a police checkpoint, please do show your passport. Please do show your international ticket. And if you've obtained permission from your governor's office to travel to Istanbul to catch an international flight, show that permission as well. If you have a problem, contact us. We will try our best to help work out the situation, but understand, because the Turkish government has not come up with a centralized process for this inter-country travel within Turkey, we are limited by what we can help you with, but we will do the best that we can if you call us. Depending on, we've had US citizens who have been successful in getting through the different provinces to Istanbul by using their persuasive skills, showing their passport and showing their ticket. So continue to do that and be in touch with us if you need more assistance.
And a lot of the US citizens actually plan to remain in Turkey and don't have any plans to return to the US soon. So we want to be sure to provide you with all the information that's most helpful to you. So again, please review our STEP notifications because we send those health alerts. And in addition to providing updated information, the alerts also provide key links to information sources on COVID-19 issues, like the Center for Disease Control in the United States and Turkish Presidency's interactive COVID-19 page. If there's information you need but you're not finding on our health alerts, don't hesitate to write us and let us know. We will work to get you the information you need. So please write us, and you can find at the bottom of all of our STEP alerts our email addresses and contact information on how to get a hold of us. Now, in a little bit, we're going to be starting with the question and answers. Those are those who have been submitted via email. Now, we have over 250 people on this call, so we cannot take questions that are popping up now, because by the time we even see it, it's scrolled on at the top of the list. If your question is not answered, and you know, it's an urgent question for you, please feel free to email us. We will try to have somebody get back to you as quickly as possible, okay? And please note, like we took a look. We had over 80 separate questions come in by last night, so we were able to pick the most common themes and common questions that you were asking. There were some very personal questions, but due to privacy issues and time limitations for this call, we're not able to respond. But you could still send us an email if your question is not answered. And also, I have a feeling there are some people on this call asking about the latest congressional legislation regarding checks being distributed to U.S. citizens. I just want to let you know that that program is being run by the IRS. So if you have questions on qualifications or eligibility, please go to the irs.gov website, because the State Department does not play a role of any sort in these disbursements. So at this point, we can get to some of the common questions and answers that we had come in over the weekend. Aroosha, you want to start?
Sure. Thanks, Marko. All right. Number one question. Will we be under this lockdown for a long time? Are we talking weeks or months? That is the million-dollar question, the one that all of us really want to know in order to make the best decisions for our lives and how to prepare for the next several weeks or months. Unfortunately, the global pandemic is unprecedented and completely difficult to sort of figure out what's going to happen next. No one knows how long it will last. The internet is filled with so-called experts telling us it will last for 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, but no one knows. With that in mind, it would be best to plan smartly in the current situation, thinking of it as lasting a matter of several months rather than weeks. Hopefully that is wrong, and things will start getting back to normal sooner than you expect. But you do not want to be in a situation in which you have a place. You want to be in a situation where you have a place to stay safe and hunker down. The situation could go a lot longer than we expect, and it could even get worse.
One question, one of the other most common questions is, in light of these current travel restrictions, should we make an effort to return now or plan to remain in Turkey until later than our currently scheduled return? And what are our suggestions? So your decision will depend upon a lot of factors that only you can determine. Like, how urgently do you need to return to the US? Do you have a place that you can hunker down here in Turkey? Perhaps your own apartment or family or friends you could stay with? Are you well stocked with provisions? And does the situation where you are in Turkey appear to be better than your city or town in the United States? All of these are factors that you need to assess for your situation. However, if your assessment is that you need to return to the United States now, then you should do so now, while this commercial flight option is still available. Because I personally cannot predict, nor can any of us, what will happen in a week. It could be that all flight services are suspended, or it could be that some flight services start back up again. Nobody knows. So if you have an urgent need to travel, we do ask that you do so now.
All right, in a similar vein, we've received a lot of questions from folks that are working here. This is an example of one of those questions. I work at a private school, and the school may not reconvene this year. Would you advise us to fly home now or stay in the area? If we do not fly home now, might we be stuck here all summer? It's a great question, and as Marko said earlier, the answer for you will depend upon your own personal circumstances. Do you have an apartment or a home here in Turkey? Is the US your primary residence and you are only in Turkey for a limited time just to be here for that school year? What support or assistance is the school giving to teachers and administrators? If your ties are in the US and you are concerned about being stuck outside of the country, you should strongly consider returning now to the USA. As mentioned earlier, we don't know how long the pandemic will keep the entire world on virtual lockdown. No one knows if this will last into the summer and beyond. But if it does, then any American citizen who is still in Turkey might find themselves stuck here. The window of opportunity for you to leave is as commercial options exist. So please take that decision seriously.
And now many of you ask, what happens when we fly home to the United States? Is there a quarantine process, or what can I expect? Per the CDC website, we have identified some of the procedures. And I need to emphasize this, of course, that as you see, the procedures and information are changing constantly. So while I can provide you the information, the most updated information I have now, we really encourage you to check the Centers for Disease Control website before your travels to the United States. So according to the CDC website, travelers returning home from international travel should, 1, stay at home for 14 days from the time you return home from international travel. So during this 14-day period, you should practice, social distancing, monitoring your health. They do advise you take your temperature with a thermometer at least 2 times a day and monitor for fever. And also watch for cough or trouble breathing. Of course, that includes staying at home and avoiding contact with others, not going to work or school, not taking public transportation, taxis, or ride shares, and keeping your distance from others. We say about 6 feet or 2 meters. So what happens if you do get sick, right? If you do get sick with a fever or cough in the 14 days after return to travel, you should stay home and avoid contact with others, because there is a possibility you might be positive for COVID-19. The good news is that most people are able to recover at home without medical care. But if you have trouble breathing or worried about your symptoms, you should really call your medical health provider. Tell them about your recent travel, tell them about your symptoms, and please call ahead before you go to a doctor's office or emergency room. Because they might have more information on where to go and where to get the best support you need for your issues. Aroosha?
All right, thank you. The next question is, on approximately what date can we go back home to the United States under normal circumstances? I've seen that some of you have booked tickets for return travel to the United States at the end of April or the beginning of May. Right now, as Marko said, we don't know what flights will remain on the roster and on the schedule. What we do know is that you can go back to the United States right now through the Belavia Air flight connecting through Minsk. It requires connections, but remember, there are no guarantees on how long these commercial flight options will remain an option. And also, just because you booked a ticket out in the future, we don't really know what will be the operating space at that time. So if you would like to return home, now is the time to do so while the Minsk flight remains.
And another question is, we know in the USA the peak period is expected to be in the next 2 weeks. Does this signify a time frame for the US to return to normal? And has the government of Turkey announced anything similar regarding peak period and possible scale down of cases in Turkey? First, the CDC has not definitively stated that the peak period will be in the next 2 weeks. And no one should plan on being a time frame for things to return to normal in the United States. I mean, if you look at China, they're only now slowly, regulation by regulation, step by step, trying to return back to how they were beforehand. I do know that both the governments of the United States and Turkey continue to put measures in place to halt the spread of the virus. And if you take a look, Johns Hopkins University has a publicly available map which shows the number of confirmed cases and total deaths in each country around the world. You can find the map, I think, by performing a Google search. According to this tracker, the US has more confirmed cases than any other country right now worldwide. Turkey, I believe, is in the 9th position from the last time I checked. So you can find daily updates on the number of confirmed positive cases in Turkey, also on the Mission Turkey's health alerts, which we are sending you daily. Make sure you've signed up for STEP to automatically get those health alerts, but like I said, most of you should be already registered as you're on this call.
All right, the next question. Are there any plans for the American citizens to be repatriated with a charter or government-sponsored flight back home? This is a very important question because a couple of American citizens, actually more than a couple of American citizens, have told us that they need to go home, but they are content waiting until the United States government organizes a repatriation charter flight rather than taking a commercial flight option that is now available. That is a really bad idea. As we told you earlier in our opening, the US government does not anticipate arranging repatriation flights in Turkey at this time. As we know, this is a worldwide pandemic, and the United States government is looking closely at repatriation options for US citizens located all around the world. And we have definitively been told that it's not an option for us at this time. We urge all US citizens who wish to return home to make your commercial arrangements as soon as possible, unless you're prepared to remain here for an indefinite period. This is the same advice that our ambassador has passed to our colleagues that are working here and living here on diplomatic assignment with their families. Many of us have made the choice to stay here, and some of us have made the choice to go home. It really is a very personal decision, but please do not wait for us. Do not wait for a mythical option, because right now that's really what it is. There isn't an option out there in the future that the US government would arrange a flight for you.
And Aroosha, just to mention, even if the US government arranges a flight, this is not a free flight. You will have to be paying for the seat at a commercial rate. So there is no sort of romanticized or idealized version where the US just gets a plane, people load up and go to the United States. This would be a service that would require you to pay for the seat. And another question, we would like to return to the US at the end of June or July. And if commercial flights are not available by then, can we expect repatriation flights? I think you've heard our common theme, and the short answer is no, that nobody at this point should expect a repatriation flight because we do not know what the situation will be like or what available resources will be in the future. So if you are unable to remain in Turkey for an indefinite period, then you should strongly consider going home now to the US. We hope the situation will be better by the end of June, but I can't provide any guarantees. And the last thing that I would want to do is have somebody stuck here without a place to stay or dwindling resources. So if you are only prepared to stay in Turkey for a limited amount of time, then you should go back to the United States now while a commercial option still exists.
And I'd like to add something to what Marko just said. We do have a program and a service that we can offer to US citizens. It's called a repatriation loan program. If you are in a situation right now where you are destitute or having trouble buying a commercial flight option, we can help you by giving you a loan, which we help you purchase the ticket, and once you return back to the United States, you repay the US government. That is an option that is always available to US citizens that find themselves facing a hardship overseas. Please do contact us if that is your situation. We are more than happy to help you. Similarly, as you have seen in the alerts that we've sent out, we are open for emergency appointments for US citizens who have lost their passport or something else has happened and they have found themselves without documentation to help them travel. We are still scheduling passport appointments, so please do get in touch with us for that. I have another one of our questions that has come in that was very popular was, do you think commercial flights will stop in the future? As we can see over the weekend, the Qatar Airways flight dropped off the list of options. So yes, commercial options may pop up in the future, but they may also drop down. What we do know is cargo flights seem to be traveling in and out of Turkey, so there could be a possibility of a commercial flight popping up, but we don't know right now. If you saw on the domestic side, the government of Turkey has suspended all of the domestic flights. The government here in Turkey is doing their utmost to make sure COVID-19 doesn't spread by limiting travel of the people. And that is part of the reason why the flight options are diminishing so quickly. One factor when you're looking at all flights is that airlines have to look to see what their profit margin is. So if a flight is going less than half full, depending on what the options are, two things we can see happening. The commercial flight price might increase, or the airline might decide to stop running that route. So those are some of the factors that are in play that we don't have any control over.
Yeah. And on that note, Aroosha, we also ask if we have any indication when Turkish would resume its flights, and right now the answer is no, we don't. We've been speaking with our Turkish airline partners extensively, and as you know, they suspended from April 17th to May 1st, and I do believe that future extensions are very much possible. So the short answer to that question is no.
All right. We have a question here about, in order to go to the airport, will you, the U.S. Embassy, U.S. Consulate General, U.S. Consulate, provide a paper in case police along the road ask why we are leaving? As I mentioned during our intro, we have been informed by the government of Turkey that the Minister of Interior has instructed all governors to let foreigners travel to exit and depart the country. Okay? That includes US citizens who are driving to the airport to get on their outward bound flight. But there is no national process for this. The governors are responsible for handling travel permits for individuals in their province. If you plan to drive to the airport in order to fly out of the country, please follow the instructions we've sent out on our last 2 alerts, or email us if you don't have that information. We will collect your personal details and double track it by sending it to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But to give you an idea, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is handling evacuation flights to numerous countries, and including tracking this for a number of different foreign missions. So it's not a foolproof matter. We will do our best to help you. When you are driving, please remember to carry your identification, including your US passport and travel documents, including your flight ticket with you. And if you encounter a problem along the road, please let us know about that. This may mean that if when you're on the road that you will have to try your politest negotiation skills to whoever stops you, understanding that the police, the gendarme, whoever is doing the checks along the road are simply trying to enforce their president's wishes. So we don't want you to get into an altercation with the authorities. Please just ask to call your US consulate or your embassy and connect with one of us, and we will try to help you out in that moment and do the best that we can.
Thanks. Before I get into my next question, I just want to let everyone know, because there is a lot of information being presented. We are recording this broadcast, and we will post it shortly after this presentation is over. So my next question is, what advice do you give American citizens who are here on a tourist visa, but because of coronavirus travel restrictions have been unable to leave and may overstay their tourist visa? So I have the advantage of giving you some good news. The government of Turkey has notified the US Embassy that they will not pursue overstay penalties against any foreign national unable to depart Turkey due to COVID-19. So right now, this is all fairly new, and the US mission in Turkey, we are seeking clarification on any actions that Americans must do to benefit from this. So for some of you, you can rest assured that, there should not be any penalties for overstaying at this point.
All right, on a similar vein, one of our US citizen residents that resides here in Turkey has asked this question: what advice do you give for an American citizen whose Turkish ikamet has expired and who has submitted an online renewal application, but who has not yet received their new ikamet card? Under normal circumstances, they would not be allowed to travel abroad until they have their new ikamet in hand. Okay, so for this question, I do direct you to the Göç İdaresi website. They have the most up-to-date information on the ikamet process. I have heard anecdotally that this doesn't prevent you from leaving the country. You can leave the country as a foreigner while your ikamet process is still happening. It does mean that when you try to re-enter, you might have to get in touch with the Göç İdaresi and restart that process. At this point, I don't have more information. We don't have more information to share with you on that. I have asked my contacts at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs if they have any advice to people, and their advice has been very logical and common sense, which is, Please, if the foreigner feels like they're, please tell them to go home while options exist. They can work on the iqamet process again when they're on their return to Turkey, or explain the circumstances for why they left before getting their renewal. We don't want anyone to wait here for the paperwork process to complete for their iqamet when they could have returned home to the United States if that was their desire.
Another question, people are concerned about their spouses or family members' immigrant visa. Specifically, one question, my spouse has an immigrant visa but has not been able to travel to the US on that visa due to the current crisis. So what happens with the visa? What if the visa expires? Can the visa be extended? Can you even get a new visa? So once this crisis is over, we will do everything we can to help. If you or your spouse or your family member has not traveled on your immigrant visa and it has expired, you need to contact the immigrant visa unit at the US Embassy in Ankara. The immigrant visa unit is only in Ankara. We do not have one in Istanbul. And you should do that after the travel restrictions are lifted, because we have a dedicated team of officers that will point you to the regulations and provide you any further instructions that might be needed.
All right. The next question we have is, what is the plan if the situation deteriorates in Turkey? A number of you sent this question in. I really have to reiterate from the bottom of my heart, bottom of Marko's heart, even from our ambassador himself. The US mission here in Turkey has no greater responsibility than the safety and security of US citizens in Turkey. We're committed to providing you with clear, timely, reliable information, and that's the reason we've been issuing the daily health alerts to you with updates on the evolving situation in Turkey. As soon as we know, you will know. As you've seen, the Department of State has issued a level 4 global health advisory advising US citizens to avoid all international travel due to the global impact of COVID-19, or to return home immediately unless they are prepared to remain where they are overseas for an indefinite period of time. The US government does not anticipate arranging repatriation flights in Turkey at this time, and limited international commercial flight options currently exist. US citizens who wish to remain here, US citizens who wish to return to the United States should make commercial arrangements as soon as possible on the next available flight, while the flight option currently exists. Otherwise, please be prepared to remain here for several months. If you have concerns about remaining in Turkey for an indefinite period of time, then you should strongly consider making arrangements to the United States now. As we've said earlier, this is a very personal decision and a very difficult one. We completely understand that. We don't mean to minimize that for you. We just can't make the decision for you on this. Those of you who are staying here, decide to stay here, just make sure you have enough food and medication on hand and follow the health guidance of local authorities. We have looked at many of the provinces here in Turkey and assessed that pharmacies are still open, grocery stores remain open, gas stations remain open. These are things that we look at both for our own benefit for the people that are working for the mission, and also to understand what our US citizens are facing in the local environment. Please be wise and take decisions to make yourself comfortable at home for you and your families if you decide to stay here.
All right, and is there an estimated date when the embassy will be open for business again? So the embassy and consulate general are still open, and we do continue to provide emergency consular services to US citizens. So if you require an emergency passport, please make an appointment online or email us. We are, limiting the days of counter services, but we are still providing those services. And we are limiting it, of course, to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So the majority of our staff are currently teleworking from home. Additionally, as Aroosha said earlier, if you have or require a repatriation loan, you should speak to us and see how we could help you process that. We, of course, are still open to assist Americans in emergency situations such as victims of crime, arrests, emergency passport, children's issues. So please email us if you have any concerns of what we can or cannot do to assist you. And again, our contact information is at the bottom of the mascot message, the step message that we sent you earlier. And then also, you know, another question very similarly related is my child's passport will expire in a few months. Will consulate services be available for renewal? So if your child requires an emergency passport, meaning emergency travel, you can still make an appointment at the embassy in Ankara or the consulate in Istanbul. But if you don't have plans to travel, please consider waiting to apply until not just our facilities return normal operations, but when it is safe for you to be leaving your house to travel to one of the two locations.
Next question. I'm a student and I don't have a lot of money. I only have about $100 to $200 for myself for food and road money. Can the embassy or consulate offer anything to help with this issue by giving me a loan or anything like that? And what do we do once we return home? As I mentioned earlier and Marko just said, if you are unable to support yourself for an indefinite period of time in Turkey, you should strongly consider returning to the United States immediately while commercial options exist. If you are destitute and unable to pay for the flight, please contact us. We can talk to you about your situation. We can help book you on the next available flight. That also includes a hotel for an overnight before you board your flight. You return home after you sign a promissory note with us, and you have an indebtedness to the US government at that point. We limit your passport for a direct return to the United States, and once you return home, as soon as you fulfill the obligations of your loan, the repayment, you can apply for a new passport and get the full validity one again. We are able to issue the loans on an emergency basis, but we cannot issue loans to you to sustain your living situation here in Turkey. We've received some questions about, could you please help me pay for my rent? Or my landlord said that my rental agreement ends in 1 month. Can you please help me find a place to stay? Do you have a list of job opportunities for US citizens here in Turkey? Things like that. Unfortunately, that is not a service that we can provide to you.
Now, another question, is there anyone that would be able to assist elderly disabled AMSITs to travel back to the US? If a citizen would like to return to the US, they should make arrangements as soon as possible while the flights are available. I know there is a lot of connections and it's not an easy process. But if you urgently need to go, what we're saying is there is still an option that allows you to travel back to the United States. So please contact the airline when you make the booking to request special assistance. And I think with proper notification, airlines are able to provide some assistance to those passengers with mobility issues.
Great. Okay. We have been receiving a lot of questions to all of our inboxes and through phone callers as well about different benefits that might be available to US citizens due to the COVID-19 bill. As Marko stated, the stimulus check that everyone is referring to or you may be seeing in the news is not something that the State Department controls. You can go to irs.gov and look into information about that, and also speak to your congressional representative back home if you have any questions. Specifically about unemployment benefits. Unemployment benefits are administered by each of the 50 states and the District of Columbia in the United States. Usually, states expect employees to apply for benefits in the state where they work. This is not something that the Department of State can assist with, but you should get in touch with your state of employment for that information. Some of you also have been asking us about Social Security benefits. We get those questions year-round, not just during this COVID-19 moment, but the State Department also does not administer Social Security benefits. There is a federal benefits unit in Athens, which you can email, and that information is also listed on our website. So please go ahead and find that information and email them your questions directly.
And so next question, what is Turkey's healthcare response for foreigners? What should I do if I feel I'm getting sick? Is there a number I should call? So if you're getting sick and concerned that it might be COVID-19, the Turkish authorities have set up a hotline for this purpose. And you would dial the numbers 184. This hotline is dedicated to issues related to COVID-19. Now, in case of an actual emergency, please contact 112. And that's the number that's dedicated to all health issues in Turkey. 112 also has English speakers for foreign nationals although there's a possibility that you may not be able to reach an English speaker right away. Next, if you're a resident here in Turkey, I would really recommend that you discuss your symptoms with your physician. They will likely provide you guidance on the next steps, including which hospital is likely to assist with the treatment. What they're doing is essentially following the guidelines that the Ministry of Health drafted in a booklet available on its website. And just to let you know, even if you have private insurance or prefer a certain hospital, the ministry has issued a directive on which hospitals are able to assist with this treatment. So it's very possible that your primary care physician will direct you to a different physician or a state hospital for treatment. And finally, if you do not have a hospital and require some sort of evaluation, please take a look at our website. We have a link under U.S. Citizen Services for medical resources. And that could direct you to some English-speaking doctors and hospitals in the area. And it's also important to note, and we've been asked this before, but the Consulate Embassy do not provide medical services to our citizen population. We just don't have the capacity to do that. And another question, if any of our teachers or families have a close relative in the US become seriously sick or pass away, what is the best way to quickly arrange flights to the United States? Now, this is a very important question and an issue that I think comes in factoring sort of your situation here in Turkey. And if there is something, or have a family or care about the welfare of a loved one who might be ill, you may want to travel now while a commercial flight is still available. We, again, as Aroosha mentioned, I know many people have already left Turkey for precisely this reason, going through Minsk as well, because they want to go home and take care of elderly parents or don't want to be here. So if this is a primary concern from you, I'd strongly consider going home.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I had a little bit of a technical difficulty. Let's see. The question.
I think it's if the government has any plans to close airports, the U.S. government.
Yes, thank you.
If you want, I could address this.
I got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
We're unaware of any plans to close down international airports in the United States that would cut off U.S. citizens from returning home. However, we are unable to predict for how long existing commercial flight options will be available. And although a number of international commercial flights have been significantly reduced in the past few weeks, there are still flight options available now to return to the USA.
And another question. Oh, sorry, Aroosha.
That's okay, Marko. Go ahead.
No, and the next question is, do you recommend having more cash on hand during this period? Do you have any reason to believe that Turkish banks will at some point be unable to dispense cash? And this is a question of probably greater concern to our American citizens who live here, but there are many thousands of Americans who have lived here for years and have no plans to return to the US at this time. I would say the short answer to this question is we do not have reason to believe that Turkish banks will be unable to dispense cash. However, Turkish companies and banks are likely facing the same strain as a great number of companies and banks around the world. So just like I would say in preparation for a natural disaster, in general, I think it's always sound advice to make sure that you have cash on hand that your supplies are fully stocked while you can, including medicines, cleaning material, and other necessities. This doesn't have to just go, and this is not just exclusively for Turkey or for COVID-19, but in general, as a smart tool, you should always have enough cash and enough supplies to last you in case of any emergency.
That's right. Okay. Our other question out here is, if my plans are to return home in the summer, should I just purchase my tickets now for the summer and wait until it's closer to that time to see what's happening? If you're planning to leave this summer, what we recommend to you is to leave right now on a commercial flight as soon as possible and not wait to see what happens in the summer. We're going through this unprecedented situation. Many of us do enjoy and like living here in Turkey, or if we're here as a tourist, we've seen many people who have extended their tourist residencies here to remain for a year or longer in Turkey. But right now, for those planners out there, you really need to consider that we don't know what the landscape will look like in the summer. So we do encourage you to make your decision to leave sooner rather than later.
And another question is, if we do book a flight from Istanbul to the US, what can we expect at the Istanbul airport? Are restaurants open? Is there screening? So congrats for booking your ticket. I understand that there are regular screening and temperature checks, and they continue at the airport and have for the past several weeks. I've even heard secondhand from contacts from other consulates that when you go to the airport, I believe only one door is actually open. So when you first drive up, you'll see one open door. I think originally they have like 9 or 10. But in the past, you want to see if it's door 1 or door 2. Right when you get in, there will be temperature checks, and they will be screened to make sure that you have a boarding pass or flight ticket on hand, as well as check your documentation. I don't believe, from what I've heard secondhand, that there are any restaurants or shops open due to the fact there's very limited flights left out of Turkey. So please come prepared with food if you need it, especially since delays are possible on any flights departing Istanbul.
On that note, we have a question about a worst case hypothetical scenario. They train us as diplomats that we should never answer hypothetical questions, but I'll take this one anyways. In the worst case scenario, will local bazaars in villages still continue? The village I live in is almost 100% relies on the bazaar for their food. We don't have any indication that food markets here in Turkey will close, and the government has been positively reporting on its food supply. However, local authorities may put in place additional COVID-19 restrictions with little advance notice. It is generally a good idea to have a supply of essential items such as water, non-perishable food, and medications on hand. We provide the same advice to everyone regardless of this pandemic, as a natural disaster or other disruption could occur at any time. Also, if you are traveling back to the United States, as Marko said, you may need to carry your own food and medication with you for your time at the Istanbul airport. The same also applies for your transit back to the US. I don't know what your housing situation is like, but CDC regulations that require you to quarantine at home away from your families means that you might go to a hotel or an Airbnb or some sort of situation where you don't have food provisions available for you upon arrival. So do bring some snacks and items for you, and particularly your medication, so that you have that when you enter the United States.
And next, are visas still being processed? And a few people have asked that. So due to COVID-19, we've actually suspended routine visa processing. And at this point, unless there's a visa applicant with a medical or possibly humanitarian emergency that requires urgent travel to the United States, they can actually request an appointment directly from us. And I'm going to give you the email address right now. It is https://ais.usvisa-info.com. Somebody from my staff will be putting it down below, but for those who are possibly going to watch this on a recording later, that is the entire link.
Great. All right, as Marko had said before, we are going to link to a video, have a video of this webinar, this hangout online and available to folks that were not able to join in. Next question, in the worst case scenario, what are the chances and procedures for repatriation of a deceased family member? Part of our ongoing duties as the American Citizen Services section in the U.S. Embassy and the consulates are to help U.S. citizens in repatriation of remains of their loved ones. In the case of the death of a family member here in Turkey, consular staff will assist family members and friends and provide information on the procedures in Turkey. The ability to repatriate remains would depend on what flights are operating at that time. Most international flights and all flights to the United States from Turkey are currently suspended, but I have confirmed with a couple of the larger funeral homes that work on repatriating our deceased loved ones back home that the flights are still operational to do those procedures. So we are always available, as Marko stated before. One of our ongoing duties as American Citizen Service providers is to work on children's issues, to work on people that are destitute and they need help, our help repatriating them back to the United States through the loan program. Also working with you if a US citizen has died overseas is one of our continuing responsibilities.
And I believe I have the final question because Aroosha, we had one more on Ikamet, but I think we addressed it. But the question is there any way to receive prescription meds from the US or acquire the same medicine locally? If you do require medication, please consult your doctor or pharmacy regarding its availability. That's the best information I can provide you. Because if you are concerned about having access to your medication in Turkey, you might want to consider making arrangements to return to the United States. And for those, and now that we are ending, I just wanted to highlight a couple things. We have sort of discussed almost ad nauseum at this point that there is a commercial option still available. Those who have urgent travel and are somehow not able to make this commercial option work, please get a hold of us. We want to track your information. We want to see who has urgent travel but is unable to travel for medical reasons or age or other limitations that prevent you from traveling. Please get in contact with us. We do track these cases because we're doing our very, very best, trust me, our very best to make sure you can get home the best you can.
Yes, and we really, really, really wanted to thank you for joining us today. We know Google Hangouts are difficult with such a large number of participants, but we wanted to pull this off this week instead of waiting for more days to pass because we wanted to have a live interaction with you, which we can't have right now in the sort of traditional town hall forum. But so thank you very much for participating with us. It is our goal to communicate whatever we can with you as soon as we hear it, so that you can make the best and most informed decisions about the right thing to do for you and your families. If you have any feedback, please email us. Depending on how this pandemic continues to impact our lives, we may have an opportunity in the future to do something like this again. Thank you very much from both on behalf of Marko and I for taking the time to listen to us.
Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you, everyone.